Hello, so this is going to be part 4 of my Whispers of the Old Gods review, and this part is going to be the Mage. Similarly to how I did my Druid and Hunter guides, I'll go through all of these cards, and then after going through all these cards, I'll try to build one standard deck of Mage that I think will be good in the standard format. I think Mage is a good class in the standard format, primarily because of Freeze Mage. I think that Blizzard did a lot of nerfs, but they didn't nerf Ice Block or Alexstrasza. And I think like a Torch style Freeze Mage is still going to be good. Now, one caveat to that is they did print quite a lot of like gain 10 health type cards for these Cthulhu decks, and I do think a lot of people will be playing those. Also, I think a lot of people will be playing Aggro Shaman, which is a counter to Freeze Mage, so it's possible this deck is just sort of sitting around waiting for the right metagame, but it is still going to be a really strong deck. Tempo Mage still probably has a deck as well. So yeah, we'll see. Like maybe I'll build a Tempo Mage, considering the Freeze Mage is probably not even going to use any cards from the new set. But let's get right into the review. So first one is the legendary Anomalous. Death Rattle, deal 8 damage to all minions. So I don't think this card is good. It's a 8 mana 8/6, which is really bad. The Death Rattle's okay, but how are you ever going to proc it? I mean, you need to proc the Death Rattle pretty much immediately. Now, I'm just trying to think, like, if somehow you're playing some super grindy Mage and you somehow just deal with everything, then you play this on an empty board, it's still not good. It's 6 health, right? I don't think this can ever really be good. I could be wrong, but I don't see how this works. Kabbalah's Tome. Add 3 random Mage spells to your hand. I think this card is decent, probably a little underrated by most people. It's just a ton of value, and a lot of people have been trying to compare this card to Arcane Intellect and saying, well, you draw better cards from your deck, but I think a better comparison is actually more like Echo of Medivh. So the thing with Echo of Medivh is it's not really good in fast matchups. It's only good if you're like stalling out the game and stuff like that, and you can get these like huge values from it. Granted, it's a different kind of value, because obviously in that case it's a lot more you're picking which minions you're going to echo and all this sort of stuff. But I think this is only a card that you're going to use like in control matchups, and it could be a card though where you can play like maybe one of these in your deck or something, and it can give you a lot of game versus those type of matchups, especially in Wild. Now, in Standard, because there's no duplicate and no echo and stuff, it's a lot harder to get spells that give you a lot of value. But it is still going to give you 3 value worth of spells. And then the other thing that we saw on the stream when Frodon was playing this was you can tome into tome, which then if you tome into tome in a sort of value matchup, you're almost always going to win, I would think, and it's a reasonable chance you do that. So yeah, I think this card it's definitely sort of a more control card, and in general I don't like control much in Hearthstone right now. I think aggressive decks are just generally better. Mage is one of the classes that can pull it off, though. Like decks like Freeze Mage, sort of like a hybrid control / combo deck. I don't think this would really fit in Freeze Mage, but it could fit into some sort of more like fatiguey grinder type mages. And Mage is one of the classes that has so much burn and so much removal that playing a more fatigued style can work. And I played a decent amount of Fatigue Mage, and the real weakness of Fatigue Mage is that like a lot of decks have too much value to overcome. Like, it's so hard to deal with, like, if you're just 1-for-1ing and you're killing minions like Paladin Shredder, and they're getting another minion, and then you're 1-for-1ing again. So you have to set up these boards where you can, like, either Frost Nova Doomsayer or get, like, big Flame Strikes and stuff, and generally the AoEs are the ways you win those matchups, because you're just kind of grinding it out. Well, this Kabbalah's Tome thing actually fits into that really well, because now, number one, they don't have as many Death Rattles themselves, right? So they can't, like, a lot of 1-for-1s and then into some AoEs is good. But then, number two, you can actually have a pretty decent chance of finding more Blizzards and Flame Strikes off of this. So, like, I would think this deck would go in a deck that's pretty defensive, has, like, you know, a lot of board clears and a lot of defense taunts and heals, and you're basically just aiming to just grind them out, right? And that deck can work, so I think this card's okay. It can see some play, but it's in a very niche situation. Forbidden Flame. Spend all your mana to deal that much damage to a minion. I think this card is good for one reason, that is Flame Wakers. So this card, if you think about like using Flame Waker, if you've played Tempo Mage a lot of times like you have these spells in your deck that are just okay, but then once you have Flame Waker, they're amazing. Like obviously Arcane Missiles is one of those, and like even something like Arcane Blast, you know. Oftentimes with Flame Waker, you don't have spell power, and you Arcane Blast with 1 mana to get, you know, 2 damage and 2 1/1 things or whatever. So I think Tempo Mage will still be a deck, and I think this card will be played in it because Flame Cannon goes away and Unstable Portal goes away, and so just having the ability to have another cheap spell that works with Flame Waker that's still decent. I mean, it's not, no one's trying to say this is the best card in the world, right? Like everyone evaluates this card as an, oh well, Flame Lance is better or something later. Well, yeah, I mean, the reason to play the card is not because of the overall value of the card, it's more the synergy of the card, and that's Flame Waker. And so when you have a Flame Waker, this can even be 0 mana extra pings if you really want to try for that. And it also allows you to set up your mana such that whichever amount left that you need to do this, you can do it, you know. Or if you want, you can just do one huge one that still has some pings too. And worst case scenario, it's like on turn 2, you pay 2 mana and kill one of their minions, you know, or even on turn 1, they play a Leper Gnome, you kill it. So like, this is underrated. It's at least okay, and I think it will be played in Tempo Mage at least. That's probably the only type of mage that will be played in, but Tempo Mage is a good deck, and Flame Waker is still in the rotation, so I think it will get played. Servant of Yogg Saron, cast a random spell that costs 5 or less, targets chosen randomly, so this card is pretty random. I think this card is pretty much only good when you're behind, but it's the reason it's bad is because it's a 5/4, so like, you only want to play it when you're behind, but in general you would want to play things like a 5/4 when you're ahead, right? Like if you're ahead and you play this, it might just kill itself, or who knows what it's going to do, right? So it probably isn't good because it's... I think it has a higher and higher and higher chance to be good as they have more and more minions, because all those spells that target something have way more chance to target either them or their minion than you or this. And the big downside of this is when you get something like Fireball and it fireballs itself, or fireballs you in the face, which that's not... The worst case is it kills itself or hits itself. So if they have a few minions in play, a lot of the spells target a minion or target a character will be way more likely to hit one of theirs. So I'm thinking something along the lines, if they have 2 minions in play on turn 5 and then you gun this down, you have a reasonable chance to get something good for yourself. But then you have a 5/4. It's so easy to deal with, you know, like when you're not ahead, just killing a 5/4 as your only defender just seems so easy. So I don't think it's good because of the stat line, not because of the effect, and it's also pretty random to rely on. Demanded Frost Collar, if you cast freeze a random enemy character, 2/4. Well, I mean, I would just compare this directly to Flame Waker, and 2/1/1, 2 damage is way better than freeze, in my mind, and it's 1 mana cheaper, so I feel like this card just can't really be good. If you think about Flame Waker, like, Flame Waker's always good. If they have an empty board, you just do a ton. It's like +2 spell damage to their face. They have a bunch of tokens, it's great. If they have big minions, it's still pretty good. You know, like, no matter what, it's good. This is really only good if they have big minions. If they have a bunch of tokens, it freezes a token. If they don't have anything, then you get no value out of multiple spells. So it's only good when they have a really wide board of small, or of wide board of big things, question mark? I don't know. I don't think this can be good. Cold Sorcerer, 3/2 spell damage 1. After you cast a spell, give your Cthulhu +1/+1. I don't think this card's a good Cthulhu card. It is a good card, though. It's just a spell damage 3/2. I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, 3/2s are okay. You know, like you play a Sorcerer Apprentice to get cheaper spells. So playing a 3/2, like, you're no longer going to have Scientist, right? I may like to try just playing this in Tempo Mage. It also works with Arcane Blast. So things like turn 4, being able to, or turn 3 rather, being able to play this and then do 4 damage with the Arcane Blast is really good. So yeah, I think this card's just a fine minion, not in Cthulhu decks, but just to play in Tempo Mage, with also playing things like that get better with spell damage like Arcane Missiles and Arcane Blast, and even Forbidden Flame, right? Like, Forbidden Flame can be cast for 0 mana with this to do 1 damage, which could be relevant. Like, let's say they play, a 2/1 on, or you go first and you play, and they play a 2/1, then you could play this and Forbidden Flame their 2/1s to protect it. It's something that could be done. So yeah, I think this card's actually good just as a flat-out minion, and I think maybe I'll put this in the deck I build a Tempo Mage and try these 2 cards in it and just see how it looks. Faceless Summoner. To be fair, though, I would not play this in a Cthulhu deck, and I don't think Mage is the class for Cthulhu anyways, although it could be. The one thing to keep in mind is Mages have a lot of cheap spells, so like something like this, if you're just always going to hold it until you get a couple of cheap spells, and then maybe even in combination with Flame Waker, get your Cthulhu bumped up a little bit, playing a bit more of a mid-range Cthulhu deck, I just don't think it fits. I think things like Ragnaros and stuff are better than a mid-range deck than Cthulhu, so probably won't work. Alright, Faceless Summoner. Everyone loves this card. 6 mana, summon a 3-cost minion, 5/5. This is okay, but I don't think it's as good as people think it is. This is not as good as Mysterious Challenger. This is not as good as Savannah Highmane. Like, is this as good as Sylvanas? I mean, it's good, but it's not as good as other 6-drops that already get played, right? And if you spend 6 mana in Hearthstone, you need to get something amazing, and this is pretty good. The thing was, like, is this better than Emperor Thaurissan, for example? Like, would you rather have a random 3-cost minion or discount your hand? I think I would rather have an Emperor Thaurissan, right? So Temple Mages don't even play Emperor Thaurissan, and Emperor Thaurissan, in theory, it's just not that great of an effect in general, I think. Like, yeah, I don't think it will be played much. Destroy a frozen minion. I don't see how this can be that good, because you can kind of compare it to Execute, where you need to do something else and then you get a cheap removal because of doing something else. In terms of Execute, it's like doing a damage. In terms of this, it's like freezing it. But doing a damage is so much easier. Like, when you're playing Warrior with Execute, you have cards like, for example, Slam, you draw a card, or Whirlwind hits everything, so it gets a Mysterious Challenger. I mean, those are all 6 mana cards that were great, and this is not as good as any of them, or even close, right? So I think people don't realize just how overpowered something needs to be to play it on 6. Twilight Flamecaller, deal 1 damage to all enemy minions, so it's like Arcane Explosion on a guy. Okay, but not great. I do think there may be sort of tokenish Warlock decks trying to do Sea Giant stuff this could be okay against, but even most of the more aggressive decks like Druid and Shaman, I guess the Living Root / Violet Teacher stuff could be pseudo countered by this. It doesn't seem great. Like, Arcane Explosion doesn't get played not because it's just not that great of an effect in general, I think. Like, yeah, I don't think it will be played much. Destroy a frozen minion. I don't see how this can be that good, because you can kind of compare it to Execute, where you need to do something else and then you get a cheap removal because of doing something else. In terms of Execute, it's like doing a damage. In terms of this, it's like freezing it. But doing a damage is so much easier. Like, when you're playing Warrior with Execute, you have cards like, for example, Slam, you draw a card, or Whirlwind hits everything, so it gets some other effect, or same with Revenge, or Despite when it was allowed, or the new card that's going to do 3 damage. Like, all those cards give you other effects, and then as a side effect you execute something, right? I guess you could make the same argument if we're going to freeze the whole board, then this, so we Blizzard and then Shatter, but that's 8 mana. Or we Frost Nova then Shatter, but then those other things don't die, and like, the killing of it is less necessary because it's frozen. Also, like, is this just better than Polymorph? Like, for example, if they have Ragnaros, do we want to have to freeze it, then shatter it, or do we want to just polymorph it, you know? So I don't think it's great. Yeah, I would say it's not great. Alright, so quick summary of all the cards before I go into building a Mage deck. I don't believe Mage will be one of the strongest decks for the following reason. I think, well, I'll get into that next. Let's go through all the cards. I think Cabal's Tome is mediocre. I think Forbidden Flame has some synergy in Tempo Mage, and so it will get played in Tempo Mage, but I think it's just okay to decent. I think this won't get played, this won't get played. I think this will get played in Tempo Mage, actually, just for the spell damage, because of the spell damage Arcane Blast interaction, and just a, you know, early body. Faceless Summoner I don't think will be played, actually. Twilight Flamecaller I don't think will be played, and Shatter I don't think will be played. Overall, I feel like the Mage cards are somewhat disappointing. I definitely feel like there's not anything I'm excited to try in Mage. There's nothing new or cool. In my previous review, I mean, I feel like the Druid cards are just so great, and I feel so excited to try all those. And even so, the neutral card review, that I didn't think any of the cards were really great, but there are at least some I'm really looking forward to try, even though I know they probably won't be good. They just seem really fun. Mage just seems very underwhelming and not fun. I don't think Freeze Mage will be the deck to play. I think Freeze Mage is great. If you think about like laughing stereotypical tournament Freeze Mage right now, it loses 2 Scientists as the 2 cards it loses, which is bad. Don't get me wrong, Scientist is a great card, but people played Freeze Mage before Scientist existed, and things like casting Ice Block or Ice Barrier is fine. The main thing Scientist did was it saved you some mana, you know, like you effectively draw the secret and play it, so it's a lot better than drawing a card, so it is better. However, every other class lost way more stuff, right? So Freeze Mage is still going to be a very good deck. You could take Laughing's Freeze Mage deck, remove the Scientists, and put in Loot Hoarders instead, and so the deck is, you know, Frostbolt, Loot Hoarder, Novice Engineer, Ice Lance, Torch, 4 Secrets, 2 Fireballs, Emperor, Alex, 2 Blizzards, 2 Frost Novas, 2 Doomsayers. I mean, something like that, right? That deck will be really good against certain decks, right? The problem is, it still could be very good, actually. It depends on which decks rise to the top, right? I'm predicting, as are a lot of other people, that Shaman will be the best deck, but I actually think Aggro Shaman will be the best deck, not Midrange Shaman. And Aggro Shaman is extremely good against Freeze Mage, and it will be even better when they don't have Scientist. So that is a problem for them. I also think a lot of people other than me like the Cthulhu stuff a lot, and the most logical Cthulhu decks are the Warrior and the Priest, and both of those will be running not only other healing, but also the big 10 Cthulhu heals, which will be pretty good against Freeze Mage as well. So there's some potential to build like a Malygos Freeze Mage that tries to one-shot priests, and that probably would work. So, but the Warriors, I mean, they're gaining 10 armor from the new Cthulhu card. They're still going to be playing shield blocks. They're likely still going to be playing armor smiths. They're likely still going to be playing Justicar. So if this deck is prevalent, it makes Freeze Mage just hard countered. So the other thing is, I believe Druid is one of the best classes, and if Druid is one of the best classes, Druid's still going to be good against Freeze Mage. It's not going to be quite as good. I mean, one of the reasons Druid was so good against Freeze Mage is because it was so easy to deal with the Doomsayer, with the Keeper, and probably you're not going to play Keeper anymore. We'll see. Maybe if Freeze Mage were popular, people may need to play Spellbreaker in Druid or something, or you know, some other silence for the Doomsayer. The Doomsayer is the key card, but anyways, like, it's pretty super easy to like basically build a board against. Like, the Laughing Freeze Mage is like pretty easy to beat, I think, if you know how to play against it. You basically don't let their Doomsayer go off, and they don't have Flame Strike, so you just build a board, and then you just apply a lot of pressure, so they have to spend their mana on their turns reacting to your pressure. So instead of burning you, they're reacting to your pressure, because they don't want to get popped, you know, they're block popped. And then eventually they have to do a Frost Nova Doomsayer, and then you kill the Doomsayer, and then you win. You just keep doing that same thing, right? And then obviously, you know, you may heal yourself a little bit here and there, or do whatever you need to do. Well, Druid is one of the best people at doing this because they have burst as well, but it's not going to change much, right? You don't need Force of Nature Savage Roar to have burst whenever they don't have board clears other than Doomsayer. As long as you kill the Doomsayer, you're going to have some minions in play, and you're going to have Savage Roar still, and you're still going to be able to pop them. Even if you don't have any combo, you might just be able to pop them with nothing. You know, like also like you know, as a druid, you gain armor. It's not as much as warrior, but you're still gaining armor every turn, which is awkward for them because you're applying pressure and gaining armor. And then you have this ability with newer druid decks as well to maybe Raven Idol big armor or health gains too. So Druid's a bad matchup for this deck still, or can be. Like, I can build a Druid deck that will beat this deck. Warrior's certainly a bad match for this deck, and Aggro Shaman's a bad match for this deck, and this is why I don't think Freeze Mage will be good, because the decks that I think will be the best deck are so good against it, right? Now, if I'm wrong about which decks will be the best deck, Freeze Mage might be the best deck, because Freeze Mage is really strong. It didn't lose anything. Like, I'm going to build a Temple Mage deck right now just because I think it will be more fun because it will use a few of the new cards. But the Freeze Mage deck doesn't even hardly change at all. I mean, you change 2 Scientists into 2 Loot Hoarders, and then that's pretty much it. I mean, like, nothing else changes, you know? It's the same deck. Still played the same way, and still probably pretty good. And also, less heal bots to fight against, and no Loatheb to fight against as well, you know? So it can be really strong if those other things don't happen, but I think they will. So let's go ahead and build a Temple Mage deck and see what a Temple Mage deck will look like. I think Temple Mage will still be pretty strong. So what do we lose from Temple Mage that is relevant? We lose Mad Scientist as the big one. But that's really about it, actually. Temple Mage still has a lot of its old cards, so I'm thinking the best way to go is to just not play secrets, because I just think secrets suck when you don't have oh, we lose Piloted Shredder and Doctor Boom, but I mean, we can just play instead of Piloted Shredder, we just play Water Elemental, and instead of Doctor Boom, we can play Ragnaros, so those don't really matter. So right now I'm playing Cult Sorcerer instead of Scientist. And I'm going to try... Also, Loatheb going away is pretty good for this deck. This deck didn't generally play Loatheb, and this deck was weak to Loatheb. What do we have? We have 26 cards, so what would I be missing for Mysteriotypical? Arcane Blast, Arcane Missile, Man. I think what I want to do is I want to play Torch, because I'm thinking, like, we did lose Flame Cannon, so we want another cheap spell removal. And obviously Forbidden Flame, you need cheap spells for this deck to work, right? So we're replacing Flame Cannon. Maybe we just want to play one Torch. Forbidden Flame is replacing, I guess, Unstable Portal, sort of, and Forgotten Torch is replacing a Flame Cannon. I guess we want to play like our one big finisher, like a Ragnaros, maybe. I feel like I'm missing some obvious card. Oh, the Secrets. So we want to replace the Secrets with something. So this is a fairly standard Temple Mage list, but with no secrets. So Secret was more of a value card, like with the Scientist. Like we made it, but like I'm running 2 Conjurer, 2 Drake here. Maybe I don't want to play Forgotten Torch. I think Forgotten Torch is generally not great in Temple Mage. It's not as great in Temple Mage. The Forbidden Flame may be better just because it can be cheaper with the Flame Waker. But we really need some more sort of early game plays, right? We only have 6 2-drops, and so we probably need more 2-drops is my guess. And ideally there would be like a spell, but it just doesn't seem like that's going to happen. I mean, we could play Mirror Image. Could play Fallen Hero, maybe. We could play this card, the Amani Berserker. People used to play Amani Berserker in tempo-style mages. It's pretty good because it's a 2-3, which is okay, and then if it's not dealt with, it's basically a 5-2 for a ping, you know. Definitely could be that. Let's try that. Why not? I like that card. And actually, I think we have one more card. I will just want run the one torch, maybe. Or could also run an Archmage Antonidas. That's another thing about Forbidden Flame, by the way, is it does work with Archmage Antonidas for 0 as well, if you want to change it into a Fireball. Or for like 1, you know, you ping something and get a Fireball. Actually, I know what I want to play. I want to play a Spellslinger. Maybe I want to play 2 Spellslingers. Do I want to play 2 Spellslingers? Because we wanted to get more value. Like, this is a value card for them too, but in theory we're ahead and we get a 3-4. So I think something like this looks pretty good. So this is an example of a standard Tempo Mage deck. I think it will be pretty strong. I don't expect it to be one of the actual best classes, but middle of the pack, I think, is where I would put it. Definitely in good shape. So yeah, I guess that's it for part 4 of my review, and I still have a lot of parts to go. Let's see how many more. We got Paladin, Priest, Rogue, Shaman, and Warlock, and Warrior. So we still have 6 parts to go. I will say something, which is, so I have a lot of experience playing Hearthstone. I have a Golden Druid, a Golden Hunter. My Mage is 18 games from Gold, Golden Paladin. Priest is like about 350 ranked wins. Rogue's only about 200 ranked wins. It's my least experienced class. Shaman about 300. Warlock Gold, Warrior Gold. So I feel very qualified to know all the decks of all the classes. I've played every class. I have, you know, 5 gold classes or whatever. Almost 6. So next we'll be talking about Paladin, which I'm actually thinking is a lot stronger than people are giving it credit for. So look forward to that, and thanks for watching this video.